The Department of Justice can reopen an investigation against the National Association of Realtors. Now, there's several layers to this, and there's a few predictions here that I think are going to come true. So we're going to really explore what's actually happening, and then we're going to start discussing it. So this article is courtesy of inman.com. Check them out. DOJ can reopen its investigation into NAR appeals court rules. In another loss to the National Association of Realtors, the court ruled the U.S. Department of Justice can reopen its investigation into rules considering rules around commission sharing. So we're going to read a few things that set the framework up, and then we're going to discuss on and parse out what this actually means and doesn't mean, because there's a few misunderstandings, if you will, that we need to clear up. The U.S. Department of Justice can reopen its investigation into the National Association of Realtors Commission ruling, according to a Friday ruling from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, so the D.C. courts. The DOJ began an investigation into NAR's cooperative compensation rule, so very similar to what was being settled here recently, the headlines that you saw, similar talking points there, also known as its participation rule 5 years ago. The Department of Justice, so the DOJ and NAR, agreed to a proposed settlement. This is the important part. This is where we start getting some unraveling. To a proposed settlement of the investigations in 2020, and the DOJ sent NAR a letter saying it had closed its investigation of the two rules. However, after the White House changed hands, the Department of Justice withdrew from the settlement in July of 2021 and resumed its investigation into the rules. NAR has successfully asked a lower court to set aside the subpoena. That ruling was overturned by a split ruling on Friday. So here's what essentially happened. The initial investigation was launched, I believe it was 2019, if you will. So there was some complaints. There was some things that the Department of Justice did not like the way that it was, that NAR was handling certain commission and several different aspects that they went back and forth on. And then they had a proposed settlement. So the settlement was in 2020. And at that point, the Department of Justice said, okay, the changes that you've made so far, awesome. As you've made these changes, we're not going to go after you for these other two items that have to do with commission. So at this point, it was to everybody's understanding that everything was settled. It was good to go. Well, in 2021, as you see here, however, after the White House changed hands, the Department of Justice withdrew from the settlement in July 2021. So the settlement that was already completed. You did these four things, and so that means that these other two things that we could continue going on, we're not going to do that. We're not going to continue. We're going to consider this matter closed. That's what happened in 2020. But in 2021, that's when the Department of Justice said, yeah, let's not do that. Let's not do that. Hey, thanks for doing these four things that you already agreed to do, but we're actually going to go and look at these other two things, and we're actually going to look at other things now as well. So essentially, the only thing that changed was, well, the administration for sure, then that's a big thing, but also the only thing that actually changed was the Department of Justice changing its mind. So it reneged from its actual agreement that it already established. So nothing had changed from the NAR standpoint in the way that it was conducting business. And at that point, whenever this came back up, the National Association of Realtors was successfully able to petition against, saying, well, no, you can't change your mind. Are you crazy? What are you talking about? So that's NAR had successfully asked a lower court to set aside that subpoena and saying, no, this is done. Well, what happened on Friday? This is the headline that you're seeing now. What happened on Friday was the overruling of what was originally won by NAR in terms of, yeah, the Department of Justice can actually open up this conversation again. They can actually resume this investigation. And it's interesting that they're using the word resume. Not interesting. They're very specific with why they're using resume as opposed to a brand new investigation. So it's like there was a pause button. Well, it wasn't to the understanding of NAR and the Department of Justice back in the day that there was a pause button. That wasn't the understanding. That's not what it was. That was not what had happened. So now they're with them saying that it's resumed. That's a complete different. You're still on the same track, if you will. On top of that, you're adding some additional things. So you're materially changing what ended up happening to begin with. But anyway, so that's what the headline was discussing there. That no, the Department of Justice is able to open it up, and yeah, that's how it's going to be. So the rest of this article, we're not gonna go through the rest of the article. We're gonna go through a few parts of it. The things that I just covered kind of are already shared in this particular article that we're skipping through. But put simply, let's see here. As framed parties, the issues, judge form, awesome. Put simply, the fact that the Department of Justice closed, in quotations, closed its investigation does not guarantee the investigation would stay closed forever, the judges wrote. So, what's the point then? Right? So what's the point? I think that this particular statement right there, and based off of the timelines and things that are happening, well, I'll go ahead and make the. I don't think it's going to be a far-fetched thing. So yes, the Department of Justice can continue this, according to these courts, can continue this investigation, in their eyes, resume this investigation. Now, will they? I think a lot of it has to do with what happens in November. I think a lot of, at the time of this recording, we're talking April. I think a lot of it has to do with really the administration that we're going to have post the November elections. So I think that while the Department of Justice does have the right, if you will, at least according to the courts, to continue this investigation, I don't know if they're going to have the desire to do that right now because of the elections and things that are going to happen. Now, if the current administration wins, I think they're going to continue to go against the real estate industry. That's my belief. Regardless of what your political affiliation is, I don't care. That's my belief that it's going to continue to happen. They're going to press forward. Now, I recognize that the Department of Justice should be independent of the administration, all that other stuff. The Department of Justice should not be weaponized by the administration, but we've seen it happen in the past. There's a lot of things happening right now with it. But anyway, I think that if the administration changes hands, the White House changes hands, I don't see this continuing. That's my belief. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's how I feel. Let me know in the comment section if you don't agree. Again, regardless of your political affiliation, I don't care. Judge Justin R. Waller wrote a dissenting opinion, so essentially the opposite side. It was 2-1. So 2 said, yeah, the Department of Justice can reopen it, and 1 said, no, you can't. And this is the judge that was the dissenting vote. So Judge Justin R. Walker wrote a dissenting opinion saying the Department of Justice signed a contract with NAR and that reopening its investigation would violate that contract. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. As in every contract, each side gained something and each side gave something up. Walker wrote, the realtors agreed to give up 4 policies that the Department of Justice considered anti-competitive. In exchange, the Department of Justice promised that it had closed its investigation into 2 other policies. Fantastic. That is so well put. Walker had previously indicated NAR's settlement with the Department of Justice was a bet that the department and its staff wouldn't change under the Biden administration, and the Department of Justice would keep the matter closed. You gain the benefit of being pretty confident that if the personnel and the antitrust division didn't change after the election, you'd be good to go, Walker said during December's arguments. You made that bet and you lost. It's tough, but that's true. As articulated by Judge Walker in his dissenting opinion, NAR believes that the government should be held to the terms of its contracts, Williams said. We are reviewing today's decision and evaluating next steps. So that's the NAR spokesperson, Mantle Williams. Folks, it continues to happen. So just continues to get more and more challenging to be in the real estate industry. Just there's no other way to put it. This is independent of the settlement that we were talking about and all the in most of the other videos that we've talked about here. This is different than that. This is the settlement that we were talking about. The settlement was not with the Department of Justice. The settlement of that you're seeing on the headlines of $418 million, that was with home sellers from Missouri, or in really trying to squash all the copycat lawsuits after that. So that was the Sitzer-Burnett suit that was brought on by private individuals, private attorneys, if you will. This is different, right? So you have the sellers. That's what we were talking about. It still needs to get approved by the courts and all that fun stuff. So that's one side. We haven't even gotten to the buyers that are going to potentially bring up suit. That was the seller side. So from the buyer side, there are buyers that have brought up suit. There's a better way of saying it, correcting myself. There have been buyers that have brought buyer suits, and many of them have actually been struck down, waiting to see what the seller suits, again, Sitzer-Burnett, things like that, would actually say what was going to be rendered there. So that you have the buyers out there still being an issue in terms of what's going to happen. And then this is different than that, right? So they're attacking similar points, if you will, but they're not working together in tandem, at least front facing. Maybe they're working in the back end. I don't know if they're working together in the back end, but in terms of these different points, there's three distinct points. You have the Department of Justice, you have the buyer suits that have not been handled completely, and then you have the seller side. So what we've been talking about for the past weeks since the settlement was announced, we've been talking about the seller side. So just want to give some perspective to what we're talking about here with the Department of Justice, what this actually means, because every time we see NAR in the headlines, it doesn't necessarily mean it's good things for us, unfortunately. But let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Do you believe that the Department of Justice will actually continue pursuing this matter? Do you think it's going to matter who is in the White House come next year? The elections are happening in November, and in January, that's when the new administration takes over. If there happens to be a new administration, let me know in the comment section down below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button on the way out.